Hey, buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Heroes of the Storm is the game. And this is my first look at the brand new hero, Samuro. He was just added to the public test room, and I'm taking him out for my very first spin. So I haven't seen any of these abilities, don't know any of his talents. We're going to learn them together right here. See if we can't figure out how to play this guy, make sense of his talents, put together an early day one build for you. And just see how he works and fits into the Heroes of the Storm meta at large. So, that said, he is a melee assassin by title. And looking at his health total, that makes a lot of sense. That falls in line with a lot of other melee assassins, and not a ton, but enough to work with, right? Not really super squishy, not under the 3K mark or even close to it, closer to 4K, but a little light. He could be over 4K. I think other... So like the Butcher, for instance, are over 4K. So probably somewhere in the middle, slightly higher than average. As far as resources are concerned, there's no mana bar there. So it sounds like no mana on this guy, just totally cooldown related. And his trait is Advancing Strikes. Basic attacks against enemy heroes increase your movement speed by 25%. For 2 seconds. So that's pretty cool, right? One problem melee assassins can have, of course, is keeping up with their opponents in a fight. I don't think we'll see this actually on the target dummy. Oh no, we do. He is in fact the enemy hero. So yeah, I guess this charges up, and oh, that's something different. But we seem to be moving faster, yeah. So that indicates our advancing strikes. But this also says critically strike for increased damage. So 204, 204, 306. Yeah, so looks like every 1, 2, 3, 4th hit activates that critical strike as well. So we got a speed bonus and, in fact, a critical strike bonus as well. It's weird that that's not mentioned, though, when hovering over his trait. I think that would be included there, but it's not, so who knows. We'll figure that out later, maybe looking at talents. In regards to his abilities, first off, we got his Q, which is Mirror Image, 16-second cooldown, so pretty long cooldown. Create 2 mirror images that deal 30% of your damage and have 50% of your current health. Images last up to 16 seconds. Okay, so you can basically, in that regard, have them up forever. Alright, so they just go to a tower and die instantly. I did hear about that. Apparently it's not a bug. Apparently that is intended design, so these are not something you're going to use to soak tower shots and pressure a lane. I guess they're intended more for actual combat. So let's see if we can't actually see how those handle minion wave. Now visually it looks like these are distinct from Samuro. I don't know if opponents see them as distinct or not. I'm guessing they do. I think we'll see his heroic later on has more similar looking copies. But yeah, you just throw these in a lane and they do work, right? They don't hit very hard though, 61 as compared to our auto attack at 204. But again, his attack speed's seemingly quite fast, so the 204 looks a little low compared to some numbers you might expect. But given the crits and the attack speed, I think his auto attacks are actually right on par with most melee assassins, I'd guess. That sword does look pretty awesome, and looks like it would hurt, so I suspect it does. So 16-second duration and 16-second cooldown means if they don't die, you could keep them around forever, which is pretty cool, but they will die. They only have 2k health. But still, nice little lane pressure, add some extra bodies to a fight, essentially, to both distract opponents, eat some auto attacks, but pump out a little extra damage. So really cool ability. It's nice. Moving on to his W, that's Critical Strike, has an 8-second cooldown. Your next basic attack within 8 seconds will be a Critical Strike, dealing 50% increased damage. This also applies to images and does not break Wind Walk. And it has a passive effect. Oh, so here's where this is indicated here. You and your images deal a critical strike on every 4th basic attack. So yeah, that's their part of his W, but we can also activate the W, and it seems to cancel that animation and give you a really fast second attack, so you can weave in some extra attacks here. It's really nice. It's just a nice extra little burst. 8-second cooldown. you know, it's probably not fast enough to use twice in a sort of duel or short engagement, but over the course of a longer team fight, that's definitely going to add up. So you should be able to keep on people with this movement speed buff and, you know, occasionally pop them for some nice extra damage. And I suspect we'll see some buffs on this in his talents, but again, I don't really know what to expect there just yet. So no promises in that regard. Moving on to his E, apparently it's called Wind Walk, 12-second cooldown. Enter Stealth for up to 8 seconds, or until you attack, use an ability, take damage, etc. Standard stealth mechanic there. And while stealth, your movement speed is increased and you can pass through other units. Damage taken within the first 1 second will not break Wind Walk. Okay, so cool little, you know, non-permanent stealth mechanic. So not quite Nova or Zeratul. It doesn't last forever. It says you can pass through units. I'm assuming that doesn't mean structures, though. Nope, can't pass through structures, just units. So no body blocking when you're stealth. That's going to help you get away. So I think this is a dual purpose ability, right? It's actually an engagement tool. You can walk up on an opponent and start hitting them before they realize that you're there, and they won't collide with you, so you can, you know, walk right through the enemy team and land on the other side, and they shouldn't have a clue. Although, of course, they'll be able to see your shimmer like any stealth character, so high-level players won't be fooled, and they will know exactly where you are. So just keep that in mind. But also, this is actually an escape mechanic, whereas most stealths are not, because they require you to be out of combat, essentially. With Nova or Zeratul, it's hard sometimes to, unless you can get a lot of distance on your opponent, it's hard to stealth, because usually they can just keep hitting you and preventing you from entering stealth or having dots on you. But this is interesting in that the any damage taken within the first 1 second will not break the stealth. So you can be fighting, decide you're in over your head, stealth, and for 1 second you won't be able to be knocked out of stealth. So you can sort of juke freely for 1 second, even if they hit you and, you know, gain ground or run through somebody or basically find a way out, hide yourself in some bushes, whatever you need to do. It gives you sort of a 1 second buffer to find that escape and find that angle, which is pretty chill. So, you know, even if, you know, if there's a projectile on the way and you stealth and it hits you right afterwards and you're like, oh no, which a Nova or Zeratul might feel that pain, it seems that Samuro will in fact not feel that pain. So, pretty interesting kit. It's got a cool couple things to do. The Q is a lot of fun. Looks pretty neat, too. It's weird how that guy stood there instead of walking forward. I don't know why that is. So, you know, I might need to learn the mechanics of that. It's really bad against towers, too. So, I'll probably have to keep that away from towers to make it any good. The W is really pretty basic, but learning the timing on that and making sure you get your cooldowns off and could be complex, so maybe a little bit of skill cap there. And the Windwalk is cool too, just a non-permanent stealth. So not a lot of complexity in this kit, I don't think, but maybe some high skill cap in the way things will eventually work. So let's move on to Samuro's talents, see what these have in store for us. First up is Way of Illusion. Every time one of your images critically strikes a hero, gain 0.5 attack damage up to 20. So it takes 40 hits. And it says right there, after hitting 40 heroes, gain an additional 20 attack damage. So you go up to 40, which I think we're hitting for 204 at level 20. So 40 attack would be basically a 20% upgrade, which it's not insignificant at all. It adds up with this fast of an attack speed. Now, as far as activating that quest, when your images critically strike a hero, and I believe our images do critically strike every 4th attack, so you know, they attack pretty fast, so it has to be an enemy hero, but I feel like that's not going to be that hard to hit just because how quickly they attack. There's 2 of them. They should get off a few crits every time they're up, and it doesn't take that many 40 hits, so I suspect this will be fairly easy to get and a nice little boost. It seems like a safe choice. There's also Way of the Blade. Critical strike now happens every 3rd basic attack and deals an additional 25% of your basic attack damage. Well, that feels pretty good. If this was a 20% boost and it took a long time to get there, or 40% boost, excuse me, this is a 25% boost, but also even better than that because it actually happens every 3 attacks instead of 4. So I'm not smart enough to calculate this math right, but essentially Right now you'd hit for 204, 204, 204, and then 306 or whatever it was. So that's 612 plus 306 is 918 damage over 4 attacks. But in this system, you would hit for basically 250 plus, 255 or something like that. So 250, 250, 250, 700. Oh, actually, the 25% actually only applies to the third attack. So it would be 204, 204, and then 306 plus 50 would be 356. So you would hit for 756 after 3 attacks instead of 612. So you'd gain an extra 150 some odd damage every third attack. I'm not smart enough to calculate that math. That was probably more confusing than it was helpful, frankly. But this one actually seems more consistent to me. Plus, the way damage works, like you want your damage to happen faster, and you want your burst to be a little less predictable because that makes it harder for the enemy support to heal and just makes your damage come out faster. And it feels like Way of the Blade is going to not only accomplish that earlier in the game, but earlier in any given fight, which I think is the important distinction here. So I think the raw numbers mean this does a little less damage than Way of the Illusion, but the way this damage is applied and how quickly it's applied probably makes it a little better. And then finally we've got Way of the Wind. Attacking a hero from Windwalk increases the movement speed bonus of Windwalk by 1.25% up to 25%. After you hit 20 heroes, the duration before Windwalk can be broken by damage is increased to 2.5 seconds. So it sounds like this can be a 45% movement increase, which is very substantial. So that's really nice. And even the reward here is significant too, because it makes disengaging a lot easier. I think this is going to be super conditional on your team composition and your playstyle. It's hard to say whether this could be good in a lot of scenarios, maybe even map dependent on whether or not this is good. I could see it. It certainly is going to make an impact. That big of a movement speed boost is insane. Is it 50% or 45%? It's actually 50%, so that's huge, so fast. Yeah, that's just really, really significant. You could catch up to anybody or chase anybody down. So this might actually be very good. It's not like a raw damage output increase, but will functionally increase your damage just because you're going to be able to keep up better and stutter step better and apply damage more consistently throughout a fight better because you're moving around so much easier. So kind of a sideways increase to damage that's actually really good. Mobility is important. So maybe Way of the Wind actually takes the edge here, but all three seem okay to me. So let's move on to level 4. Up first is Mirage. I said Mirage really funny. It's late and I'm tired. Mirage, Mirror Image grants you and your images 2 charges of spell block, reducing damage from the next enemy ability against you by 50% and can hold up to 2 charges. Okay, so a cool early game spell block. I like it. I mean, it's got charges, which is nice. So it's going to last a while. It's significant. It works on your images as well, which is nice. It makes them a little bit harder to kill and soak up some extra damage, which is nice, including stuff like AoE, which they seem like they'd be rather susceptible to. So survivability is cool. Not extra damage, but survivability, again, can help. So there's also one with the Wind. While stealthed by Windwalk, you take 60% reduced damage from all sources. Wow, that's pretty cool. So, even when you're stealthed, you can still get hit by skill shots, still get hit by AoE, because opponents will see your shimmer, they'll know where you're at, and this can really make that the ultimate disengage tool, and again, actually sort of even an engage tool to some extent. If they see you coming and try to pop you out of stealth, this could make a very big difference. And, this has a 12-second cooldown, and you can stealth for 8, so it's not a permanent stealth, but by God, it gets awfully close, right? It has essentially 66% uptime, which is quite high. So I don't know, this is pretty neat too. I guess it just again depends on your composition and the kinds of fights you're going to be entering, and whether you're more of like a sort of all-in team fight, or if it's more about sort of hit and run or ambush style fights, which would support One in the Wind a little more. And then finally, there's deflection while advancing strikes is active. You take 25% reduced damage from hero basic attacks. So this is sort of just as long as you're hitting somebody, advancing strikes being your trait. And remember, this is activated from any basic attacks against enemy heroes. So as long as you're attacking every 2 seconds, this, I guess, stays up 100% of the time. And reduces damage from hero basic attacks by 25%. So it's sort of a weaker block that has theoretically 100% uptime in a fight, as long as you're really engaged. So kind of cool in like dueling scenarios, I guess. Maybe not as strong in team fights, I don't think. I think this is the weakest to me. I actually like One with a Wind quite a bit, but against spell-heavy compositions, so a lot of mages, for instance, Mirage could make a ton of sense too, but I'm going to take One with a Wind. So far, surprisingly, we've got 2 Windwalk buffs, which I wasn't anticipating. Moving on to level 7, it looks like it's all critical strike buffs. It's Burning Blade up first. Critical strikes unleash a burst of flame, dealing an additional 65% of your basic attack damage to the target and nearby enemies. That's pretty cool. I think that means this gets really good at killing minions, right? Like, wave clear seems like it's very bad for Samuro, and unfortunately wave clear in the game is really important for you guys to have. So if this can reduce his wave clear, oh, it does, yeah, it's actually quite a bit. I mean, it's still, you gotta chop these guys down. I wasn't using the W, I was just relying on the normal every 4th attack. But it helps. I don't know that it's going to make a huge impact in team fights just because people aren't traditionally that clumped. But it actually does still help your burst just because you're pumping out 65% additional damage. That's pretty nice, but really I think the benefit here is the AoE effect. So a little bit more wave clear oriented again, depending on your composition and map, which is true for pretty much every talent always. This one might work out pretty well. There's also Phantom Pain. Critical strikes deal an additional 40% of your basic attack damage for each image that you have active. Okay, so when you cast mirror image, you'd have 2, which would be an 80% buff. If one died, you'd be at a 40% buff. If both die, you go back down to 0. So essentially right when you cast your Q, you can pop out a couple of attacks, including your W, Q, and a W for a really instant higher damage hit. That said, the way this works, if they kill off your images quickly, you're not going to get that many critical strikes out by the time that matters. So I don't know. And even an 80% burst buff on a 200 base attack value is really not that much. It's you're going to hit for like, well, I guess we can actually just see, right? I think you're going to hit for like 600. Let's try this here. No, not even 469. Oh, so that's not even really that strong, right? Like, it's an extra 269 damage or like 165 extra from a normal crit. So, I don't know. It's only every 16 seconds. Theoretically. If your guys have full uptime, of course, it's every 4 auto attacks, which is much faster. But I don't think there's a lot of time where they're going to have that much uptime. See, so yeah, we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're about to time out. So we actually only got 6 off, maybe 7 if you time it perfectly. So 7 if they both stay up the full time, which is so unlikely. So, that's like an extra 800 damage off this talent per cast of your Q in a perfect world. And I think most of the time it's way less than that. So this just doesn't feel that impactful. Like, Burning Blade is much more reliable in how it activates. It's just passive and permanent, and this requires a pretty big conditional. So, I don't know. I think I like Burning Blade much better so far. There's also Crushing Blows. Critical Strike now has 2 charges. And Critical Strike deals an additional 25% of your basic attack damage. So that's actually intriguing, right? So this is a 50% buff, theoretically, right? It's 25% twice. Actually, it's more than that, because the normal crit is a 50%. So it's 75% once and 25% once, right? Because you're actually getting a full extra crit and also just 25% buff on the normal crit that you'd have. So this might actually do the most raw burst damage. But it's charge based, so there's going to be times where it's not up at all, times where both charges are up. So you could unleash a ton of damage all at once, then be dead for 16 seconds basically, or be inactive, inert for 16 seconds with crits, or for 8 seconds I guess for the first charge. But you can't do the double burst again for 16 full seconds, which most fights, if they're really short engagements, that could work. But most fights are going to last longer than that, so. You might get 1 or 2 off, but you're going to be just kind of useless in the meantime, right? I still think Burning Blade, just the consistency of this, and it's just 65% is solid regardless. And the potential for wave clear is going to make this the obvious choice for me, so Burning Blade it is. Moving on to level 10 and Samuro's heroic abilities. First, we have Blade Storm. 110 second cooldown, it's almost 2 full minutes, it's pretty long. In fact, very long. Become an unstoppable whirlwind of death. Well, that sounds pretty cool. Dealing 548 damage per second to nearby enemies for 4 seconds. So it does something like 2,200 total damage, I guess, to one target. But there can obviously be multiple targets. Well, that looks pretty awesome, honestly. And it looks like you don't have collision doing that either, so pretty free to move around, as you might expect. Yeah, I mean, that's an AoE, right? The problem, I guess, is that your movement speed's not any really faster, so people are, if they're out on the outside edge, they have a single dash, they're probably going to be able to avoid it the entire time. So, catching an entire team in this thing and making it work is going to be challenging. So 1 or 2 guys might be your only way to pull this off. But of course, if you do stealth into it, you can kind of walk into the group and like, surprise, and get 3 or 4 guys for at least a few seconds. So it's not impossible to make that work. The problem is 2,200 damage, like, that's it's not enough to kill anybody outright except your Apithers and Murkies of the world. Maybe a Chromie, depending on the level. So it's going to do a ton of damage, but I'm not sure every 110 seconds it's going to make enough of an impact, because most people are going to be able to dodge or dash out or blink out or something to avoid a majority of the damage. So cool, but maybe not super cool. Alternatively, if we can reset our talents here, we can find the darn button. There is Illusion Master, 6-second cooldown on this one, and you can switch places with the target mirror image. And passively, you can control mirror images separately or as a group, and they deal an additional 20% of your damage. Okay, so, wow, okay. We just got some crazy new bars. So, okay. So, let's cast a Q. Alright, so I now moved to this guy. And I'm controlling him. So it's pretty much Lost Vikings, right? You can drop and drag. So how do I switch again? 4, I control all 3, and 5. Okay, so you can basically turn on how smart these are. You can turn on AI control or turn it off with 5. 4 controls all of them. 3 controls 1. So standard Viking controls. But how do I switch again? Maybe with R? Oh yeah, you hit R and then you select one. But you can only do it, no, you can do it an infinite amount of times even. Oh shoot, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to turn off cooldowns to make sure you could actually do that. Oh, you can only do it every 6 seconds, I suppose. Yeah, cooldowns was making it look like you could do it infinitely, but can actually only switch every 6 seconds. So you could switch twice per cast if they have a 16-second duration, right? Not quite 3 times. But that's pretty cool, because, right, your opponents, I guess, apparently aren't going to know who you are right away. I guess they will know. You're always going to look different, at least based on this visual. I'm not sure how it looks from your opponent's side of things, but obviously the complexity here is enormous, and I'm really bad at the Lost Vikings. I just don't macro that well, or micro I should say. So This is probably going to be amazing for very skilled people who are much more skilled than me, in fact. For the rest of us, it's probably going to be too hard. Now, that said, it does have a passive effect that they do an additional 20%, which is nice. That could add up over time, but the real value here, of course, is going to be in microing and fine controlling these guys to do cool stuff. Just surprise opponents and move around the battlefield and combine that with your stealth, and like the possibilities are limitless, right? I don't even know all the creative ways people are going to find to use this, but I know that there are a bajillion. So very good skilled players will be able to take advantage of this high skill cap and probably turn Samuro into a pretty scary character in the right hands, which is cool. For the rest of us, I think Blade Storm is going to be the choice. Alright, so moving on to level 13. Up first is Mirrored Steel. Basic attacks against heroes reduce the cooldown of Mirror Image by 1 second. Wow. Okay, so that's actually really significant and changes perhaps some of the choices down here. For instance, Mirage gets way better because you get to cast it more often and therefore you get more charges and you get to eat more abilities. Phantom Pain gets better because it's easier to keep up images, right? Even probably Way of the Illusion gets better too. Because it's probably doesn't get too much better. I think you can hit this quest target regardless. But anyway, this is nice. Basic attacks against heroes reduce the cooldown of Mirror Image by 1 second. Wow! So it's 16 right now. Let's turn off cooldowns actually. And I did not mean to switch. I'm not sure how I switched, in fact. I guess right... Why did I switch? Not actually hitting any keys. But anyway, watch that cooldown bar get chopped. It's kind of insane how often you can hit this, because his auto attacks are so fast. Wow, that seems stupidly good, because opponents are going to have to burn through those if they, or at least will sometimes inadvertently burn through those, and you're just going to keep popping them out so quickly. That seems really good. There's also Kawarimi. Windwalk creates an image at your location that will continue whatever you were doing. Okay, that sounds awesome. I have to see that in action. Kawarimi. So I'm running right, and I cast it, and it continues to run right. Cool, okay. If I'm attacking this guy, and I cast it, not seem to attack that guy. Oh, now it is, okay. Yeah, so you can use this to trick opponents even more, and get yourself an extra image that does a very specific thing that your other images may or may not be doing, which is cool. I like that. But I still think Mirrored Steel sounds way better. And then finally there's Shukuchi. Windwalks teleports you a short distance in the direction you're currently facing. Okay, well that also sounds amazing. Teleports in heroes have traditionally been very good. It's really more than just a short distance too, honestly. Does it go through? It's based on the direction you're facing. So let's not do these guys, right? Let's try to teleport this way. Went through the wall, so theoretically if I'm good enough to do this, it should... Maybe the distance is just a little too long here. Maybe we'll try this tree. Yeah, we went through the tree. Sort of. I don't know. It's a little finicky, but I'm sure certain maps... Oh, there we go. Perfect. You can, as long as you're smart. You don't really control the destination as you might with something like a Blink, but or Bolt of the Storm, I should say. But it's still certainly controllable. It's just a little finicky, and it takes a little practice. But great for getting around barriers, right? So you can kind of jump in and surprise opponents from time to time, escape across an environmental barrier if you need to really hide and utilize your stealth more effectively. Also just gain ground, right? Like sometimes you just need that extra 5 feet and that'll give it to you. So that's also really good. And again, these two probably just depend on playstyle and team compositions, which one you want to choose. I don't think Kawarimi is ever going to be picked here, though. It doesn't stand out to me. I think Mirrored Steel and Shukuchi are much better. So moving on to level 16, we got Merciless Strikes. Basic attacks against slowed, rooted, or stunned targets are always critical strikes. Cool. That's not bad. The problem is, of course, we don't really have a way to slow, root, or stun a target. So that's going to be, again, team comp reliant. But if your team has a lot of slows, as a lot of heroes do, this could add up for a ton of damage. Plus, the movement speed you have means basically you will always be able to keep up with people if they're slowed and constantly keep critting them. So that's really scary. There's also Harsh Winds. Attacking a hero from Windwalk causes them to take 30% increased damage from you and your images for 30 seconds. So that's sort of a ganking style talent, it sounds like, right? You want to walk up and surprise somebody with your stealth. They don't know you're here, and then you smack them in the face, and they take 30% extra damage from you for a few seconds, which is enough to get off a few attacks, right? And for your images to get off a few attacks. I think the real problem is that as a sort of ambusher, I don't know that Samuro is going to be able to secure kills that well. He just doesn't have a natural crowd control impact. He can keep up to some extent with advancing strikes, but I'm not sure he's the ganker. Plus, by level 16, you know, that's typically beyond the gank phase of laning, where you can kind of swap lanes and catch people off guard. So this is still probably good in team fights to some extent, just because it's extra damage, but there are a lot of vulnerable effects in the game, and this one seems worse than most of them to me, because it doesn't apply for the whole team or anything, and just some problems with it. Historically, this doesn't hold up compared to other vulnerable talents at 16. There's also Press the Attack. While advancing strikes is active, basic attacks increase your attack speed by 15% up to 60%. So, geez Louise, I gotta see this in action. Advancing strikes is active. Oh my god. We are attacking really fast, guys. Oh, geez. That's cool. And remember, we're moving fast too, so stutter stepping with this is going to be impossible. At least it's impossible for me. I'm not nearly that good. So, you know, running and attacking simultaneously to keep up with an opponent when your attack speed is that high, that's going to take some micro. But if you get it down and you're able to pull that off, and you have the actions per minute, the click speed to manage that, you're going to be insane. In fact, I kind of want to see this on Arthas if I can. You can maybe use attack move if there are no other enemies nearby and the priorities stay right. But there's no way I can click to properly stutter step on this. Arthas is just chilling out here. He hasn't ran yet, unfortunately. We're gonna die. Yeah, we died to Arthas' E. Before we were able to kill him. So yeah, again, I'm not the best person to show this off, clearly. His slow is also just completely counteracting our speed, so we didn't really get a good measure of how that's supposed to work. We'll kill him for punishment. But anyway, in the right hands, again, I think somebody who has a very high skill cap can utilize this in combination with a lot of the other high skill cap stuff to pull off some crazy miracles. So I'm excited to see that in action. For the rest of us, you know, mid to low skill cap players or low skill players, I think Merciless Strikes in the right compositions will work, and otherwise we'll just have to take Harsh Winds because we're not good enough to make Press the Attack valuable. So moving on to level 20, let's take a look at this upgrade to our Heroic first. Since that's the Heroic we have active, it's 3-blade style. Your images gain an additional 50% of your health and last up to 32 seconds. So that just makes them way more annoying. That said, you know, depending on your other talents, like with Mirrored Steel, for instance, you probably don't need them to last that long. Like, I think 16 seconds, it feels like it's going to be perhaps too long anyway, because they're going to just die to stuff. So this might be overkill to some extent. The health clearly makes them harder to kill, but with a 16-second cooldown, you don't, and no mana considerations, you don't necessarily need them to last 32 seconds. Can't you just always cast your Q every 16 seconds anyway? Am I crazy? Like, doesn't that just seem unnecessary? Plus, it says right here only 2 mirror images can be active at any given time. So it's not like you can have 4 out because they last longer. You're still only going to be able to have 2. So what's the advantage of a 32-second cooldown here? Or a 32-second duration here? I don't really understand. I guess just for shenanigans with microing, I guess that's it, right? It just allows you to continue your shenanigans with 3 dudes and can fine-tuning their controls longer. But still, I feel like you could just reset every 16 seconds and do the same kind of stuff. For the other upgrade, there's Dance of Death. Your images use Blade Storm when you do. Presumably, they will also just do 30% of its damage, not the full amount of damage. But still, that could create 3 crazy zones of AoE Doom, which could be tough, and control the field and make sure that people actually do get hit. Also has some zoning potential, perhaps, depending on where your images are when you activate it. I don't know if they move or not. I guess we could just see that real fast if we wanted. So let's cast Q, and then we'll cast R. Yeah, they do keep moving if they want, so that might actually be worse than it is better. But anyway, there's quite a bit of chaos there implied. You can control quite a bit, and even overlap the zones too if you want. So catching somebody in all 3 in a big triangle of doom here, a big Venn diagram of doom, could be pretty devastating. I like that. That's a fine upgrade. It's probably, again, a safer bet. It's just predictable, somewhat reliable, easy to control. Only happens every once in a while. So for more casual people trying to get Samuro down, I think Dance of Death will work fine. There's also Wind Strider. Windwalk's cooldown is reduced by 6 seconds. It's 12 seconds now, has an 8-second duration, right? So 6 seconds means you could keep it up forever. You could just chain Windwalk for all time as long as you're able to cast. That seems cool. I mean, if that's the way you want to play Samuro, that's a nice alternative. It has clearly a lot of applications. I don't think that's how I'll play Samuro. I'm not really into stealth heroes in the first place. But in that kind of player's hands, this could be very, very strong. There's also finally Blade Master's Pursuit. Advancing Strike grants an additional 15% bonus movement speed, and its duration is increased by 2 seconds. So the name here is very appropriate. It allows you to pursue opponents even better. You go up to, 40% movement speed, which is huge, and it lasts for 4 seconds. So even if somebody uses something like a dash, you might still be able to connect in 4 seconds and start the chain all over again, which is nice. So probably just a little better at chasing people down and sticking to your opponents in engagements, which is nice. But sometimes the real problem for heroes like this, and something we saw with a hero like Artanis, is that it's not really the consistent speed of keeping up with them. It's the problem. It's the approaching them that can be the problem. Like, they see you walking up and they just step away, and you can never catch them for that first hit to start the chain. Samuro still, I think, is a little susceptible to that problem. His E helps, right? Because you can sneak up and get that first hit in, hopefully from stealth, but still, it's going to be hard because a lot of people will see the shimmer, step away, deny you that first attack, limit your mobility, and you'll kind of be stuck with no way to catch up or close ground, and then you'll just be dead because they'll shoot you from range or their teammates will help. So this is cool in an ideal scenario, but again, I'm not sure it helps the fundamental problem here because it doesn't help you close the gap. Now the E Windwalk Teleport actually is another way for you to gain ground, so that's pretty cool, and that works even if you're not stealthed, right? Like, once the stealth fades here, when we cast it, we teleport immediately. So you can just use that to jump on somebody, right? And that's really nice. But that comes fairly late at level 13. So by that point, if you have Shukuchi, you shouldn't necessarily need Blade Master's Pursuit, or will at least have resolved that problem. So that's it for Samuro's talents. It felt like it took a while to get through those, but I think we did learn some stuff. All that said, after summing up Samuro's abilities and his talents and kind of trying to parse all this in my brain as I go through this, I actually don't know that Samuro is going to be very good. He does some cool, fun stuff, but I think his kit's actually just a little bit basic, and the damage numbers don't seem that absurd to me. And it doesn't really feel like he does anything overpowered or crazy, and he lacks crowd control. And crowd control is pretty important. Having that root or that stun usually makes a big difference in a melee assassin's ability to function. So having some kind of slow or root is typically that active crowd control is more important than giving the hero like speed or mechanisms to help them catch up to their opponent. So he falls on the wrong side of that coin. The numbers seem a little off. The stealth, right now, stealth is not a particularly powerful component, and even like Zeratul is the only stealth hero who's ever really been a dominant part of the meta, and that wasn't because of stealth. That was because of a lot of the other things he did with teleports and Void Prison and just his kit being good. It wasn't really the stealth in and of itself that mattered. So stealth as a mechanic in Heroes has historically been, I would argue, a little underpowered, other than in very low skill games. But as you get higher and higher, stealth kind of gets worse and worse, in my opinion. So I don't know that that's fundamentally strong. Some of the teleports and stuff built into this do help, I agree. And the fact that damage doesn't break it is cool too. Those are neat little twists on the mechanic, but still probably not enough to make it good. His damage all requires him to be up close to people, or at least his images to be up close, which is bad. Even melee assassins like Thrall have stuff they can do from range, right? You can throw a wolf, you can shoot some lightning. Even like Butcher, who's a very close-minded melee assassin, even has a hamstring, and his charge, both which activate people or attack people from far away. Kerrigan has a jump. Like, all the melee assassins have some mechanic to help them instantly close a gap or reach people who are far away. Samuro doesn't have that. All his stuff happens in melee range. So even though the stealth could help him get there, until level 13, I think it's going to be really hard for him to get to people and close ground and actually stick into an engagement. So I don't know. I think he's just missing some fundamental pieces. I think we've learned that Samuro as a hero in the game was designed a very long time ago by Blizzard and has basically been sitting on the table for 2 years waiting to be released. And I don't know why that is. For some reason, they've held on to him for a very long time. And I think that actually shows a little bit in his design. I think it's a little less advanced than some of the more modern releases, and maybe it just doesn't fit the game quite as well. And I suspect, could always be wrong, and I hope I am, because I want every hero to be viable and awesome and fun, that even though this hero will be fun, I don't think he's ever going to be dominant without a pretty severe numbers tweak. I think he'll be sort of middling 45% win rate hero for a very, very long time. And some people will pick him up and love him because he's got a cool design, pretty fun kit, but again, just not a dominant presence in the Heroes of the Storm meta. So all that said, that's going to wrap up my first impressions of Samuro. Fun, cool, nifty looking, neat fantasy of the hero, but probably not good in my opinion. All that said, if you have any questions or thoughts on the hero, feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.